Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. Liverpool Spurs kick off the big game of the Premier League this weekend, and Liverpool continue to fire on all cylinders, remaining unbeaten, whereas Spurs lose their second consecutive game of the season. How did Spurs lose? Why did Liverpool look so good? Or how did they really get the job done? Don't worry, here at the interviews, we've got you covered. So on this edition of the interviews, we're going to break down how Liverpool beat Spurs. So Liverpool remained perfect to continue the Premier League season, 5 wins out of 5. In today's video, we're going to break down what Liverpool did right in the first half, the good and bad of Spurs in the first half. Then we're going to go on to the second half and how Liverpool were able to kill off the game. First, let's get into the lineups. We have Liverpool in a 4-3-3. No real surprises. You have Firmino up front. You have Mane and Salah out in the wider areas. In midfield, Jordan Henderson moves back to the bench. They have Wijnaldum, Milner, and Keita in midfield. Out in the back four stays the same. Alexander-Arnold. You have Robertson pushing forward, Joe Gomez and Van Dijk, and then you have Alisson Becker in midfield. You know what you're going to get from this Liverpool side. Salah and Mane trying to break in, Firmino trying to drop off, and he did that very well in this game. But the midfield three is very interesting because Wijnaldum sits deep. You have Milner kind of pushing out into wider areas, trying to get onto the ball. Keita looking to get the ball in higher positions and trying to play passes in between the lines and push Liverpool forward. Liverpool, that is their base shape. That's what's been going well for Jurgen Klopp. So there was no surprise to see them stick with that formation. Then we get to Spurs, 4-4-2 diamond. Heung-min Son back on the bench. Lamela back on the bench. But again, they go with Harry Kane and Lucas Moura up front. In midfield, they have Eriksen playing more of the free role at the tip of the diamond, out in wider areas as the shuttlers. They go with Dembele and Dyer, or they go with Dyer and they go with Harry Winks out on the left-hand side, and they stick with Dembele, who, like we've said in the previous week that Spurs played, able to cope with the attempted pressure that opposite sides would like to place on him. So that's why he sat a bit deeper, and he is a decent ball passer, often playing sideways passes. So instead of having Dyer bypass, they go with Dembele there. So when you look at it as a whole, what we've seen from Spurs this season, Lucas Moura trying to pull out into those channels, Kane dropping off a bit deeper, Eriksen obviously pulling off into that space as well, but looking to drop off and play players in behind. But missing Dele Alli's key here because Harry Winks is a reliable passer. He can retain possession very well, but he doesn't offer that third man running or that presence in the box that Ali does. So they kind of lost a goal scoring threat there. But when we break this all down, we have to start with how Liverpool approached the game, because it eventually dictated how Spurs did get chances and how they did suffer as well. So when we start with Liverpool and what they did right in the first half, the main talking point has to be their shape, because although Liverpool doesn't get a lot of credit for what they do on the defensive end besides their high pressing, here they did a very good job sitting off, not really pressing high. That hasn't been the theme of Liverpool without the ball this season. Here they dropped off into what they usually do, a 4-5-1, but what it is that has Mane and Salah in those half spaces, and that is very key. Obviously, Spurs need to get the ball to Lucas Moura and Harry Kane, and they have Eriksen floating above, but they struggle to really get the ball into their markers. They couldn't get the ball, they couldn't play it through midfield, and why was that? You often saw Dembele drop off, and that was key. He was trying to get on the ball. Sometimes you'd see Dyer drop off. Sometimes Winks. Even Eriksen at one point was dropping off. But the problem here was that the way Liverpool are lined up with the ball, it's basically a box that they form you into. Because like I said, you have Salah and Mane wide. Let's say Eriksen is a bit higher. If you have Dembele there, and even if you have Dyer there, look at how Liverpool is kind of shaped without the ball. That's how they are. They have the Mane and Salah a bit narrow, ensuring that they're somewhat goal side of those two players. And like I said, if the pass is played in from the Spurs center back into Dembele, you have Milner and Keita pushing in, and you have Wijnaldum pushing in. It's a scary proposition. We saw what happened when Liverpool played Brighton, and Bissouma did make that mistake. They didn't want to play through the midfield. They couldn't play through the midfield, and that was a big problem for Spurs. They couldn't really get forward, and when they did try to do that, it led to a lot of errors, and we'll get to that in a bit. But that is where Liverpool were really stopping Spurs from playing out the back. They couldn't build from midfield because of the way they were shaped in that somewhat of a box, you could say, because like I said, you have these 5 players virtually, sometimes 4 if you want to push Wijnaldum a bit deeper, right there, waiting for the ball to be played in. Because as soon as the ball is played in, they swarm and they close the space and they're looking to win the ball, somewhat of a pressing trap as some may call it. So that is what they did very well against Spurs. Spurs couldn't really create at the back, and that was a big problem for them. How Liverpool did create chances in the first half, in the first opening minutes, it started from Milner pushing out into that wider area. First opening minutes, ball played into Firmino from Arnold. Basically, Firmino combines with Milner, and then you have Rose, who was already tight to Salah in a higher position. What happens now is that Vertonghen is supposed to come over to deal with Milner's cross. You have Firmino running across Alderweireld. You have Mane coming across Trippier. The ball is directed into the net, but it's ruled offside. Minutes later, we have again Arnold pushing forward. He slides it into Milner. What happens now is that Firmino makes the run in behind Vertonghen, and then he runs across Alderweireld, but Alderweireld tracks him all the way, and he's only able to guide a shot wide. Firmino is making those early runs into the front post, trying to direct balls in. It's one of the center forward movements that we see from him that often is underrated, and he nearly led Liverpool into the lead in the opening 5 minutes. The other great aspect of Firmino is that his ability to drop deep is often isn't really interpreted. A lot of people miss that, but we did see that from Firmino in the opening stages of this game, more so in the first half, where he was just dropping out into position, shifting the ball out wide to the fullbacks in Robertson, in Arnold. There was one play in particular where it nearly led to a goal-scoring opportunity where Firmino dropped off ahead of Dembele, and what happens here is that he's able to locate Keita, and he plays it into Keita, plays it back to Firmino. They bypass Dyer, and they have Mane trying to break him behind, but the pass into Mane is intercepted by Alderweireld. But again, just another opportunity where they get that chance to push forward, and they don't. But again, it's Firmino dropping off a bit deeper. But when you think of it as a whole, Liverpool didn't really create many chances from open play in the first half because they really couldn't get anything going for them. Mane's passes were poor in the final third. Salah's passes weren't that great in the final third as well. They were getting a lot of their chances in transition, pouncing on Spurs' mistakes, which we'll get into. And their shape as a whole wasn't bad. Like I said, they were dropping off. They were ensuring that Liverpool couldn't play out of the back, or Spurs couldn't play out of the back. But the one problem that they did have, again, was Eriksen running off into that space. We've seen that throughout the season from Christian Eriksen. 2 plays in particular that really sum things up, where Alderweireld is able to play a long diagonal into that space, and what happens there is that Eriksen's able to run off Keita to get the ball, but Keita tracks it well, and his pullback is blocked by Keita. We see another opportunity where this time he's able to run off Wijnaldum, and basically Spurs play out the back. Ball is played into that space again as Robertson pushes up. Eriksen darts into that space. Wijnaldum is bypassed. Lucas Moura is making the run into the box, but then steps back for the pullback. The cross is played in. He doesn't get that opportunity. Again, we saw another chance where this time he ran by both players, Wijnaldum and Keita, to get onto the ball, and he plays the early cross, but Liverpool's defense coped with it. Liverpool, in a nutshell, really only in that 5-minute spell were really threatened by the threat of Eriksen pushing into that channel. Kane was deputized well by Van Dijk, and they only had Rose trying to push forward when Keita was trying to get into that space. But besides, when Keita pushed over and Rose was trying to get into that space, that was the only real threat that they had, because when Liverpool did drop off into that 4-5-1, Basically what it is that you have the Spurs players out wide and the shuttlers push out to the fullbacks. But besides that, Liverpool were really good in that sense. They had their opening chances to start the game. Firmino was playing two different roles in creating chances. And because of the way they were shaped, they forced Spurs into issues. And we'll get to that right now. Now, when we get into Spurs, their first half, they did have a lot of the ball. Liverpool did drop off, sit into their shape, tried to force Spurs into mistakes, but Spurs didn't really create any chances, and that's been the biggest problem with them this season. The fact that they lack penetration, the fact that they heavily rely on Eriksen to make darting runs or drop deep to get on the ball to create chances. Yes, they could find Kane, and yes, they could find more in those channels, but when you think about what they try to do in terms of trying to build out of the back and try to create chances from open play, it hasn't really been working for them. Here, when you look at it, obviously you have Liverpool dropping off, but when you think about how the midfield battle is, it's shaped up well because Eriksen is there with Wijnaldum. Then you have the shuttlers dealing with Dyer and Vinks. So when you look at it as a whole, really, who do you play it into? Who do you get the ball into to really find those chances? Because all players are marked out, and you really think about how Spurs are going to create chances. And this kind of led to their downfall because as Liverpool drop off into that narrow shape, you think, how are they going to push forward? How are they going to bypass that? They can play long balls in, but any balls into Kane were often dealt with by Van Dijk, as I stated before, and Moura wasn't really making those runs into the channels as we often saw him do against Watford. So when you look at it as a whole, Spurs found themselves they really dig themselves into a hole because Liverpool didn't create many chances from open play, but it was down to the Spurs' mistakes that really played them through. Like, we look at one example. You have Dyer on the ball, and he simply plays a no-look back pass between the center backs, and what happens is Salah is able to break free. Salah breaks free on goal. He forces Vorm into a save. He should score. He doesn't. That's a big warning sign for Spurs. That is a sign that something needs to be done here. You look at another opportunity. There was plenty in the first half and in the second half. But you look at another opportunity where it's Dembele just simply playing a poor pass in midfield. Mane picks it up. He combines with Firmino to again bypass Dyer. Then he's set free to run at Alderweireld. He's able to cut in and he fires a tame effort at Vorm. Again, another mistake in midfield where Spurs just aren't connecting their passes. And it's a big problem because it's sloppy play. It's not the fact that they're being outplayed in sense of Liverpool finding actual ways to get in behind their defense. It's just their mistakes. Then we look at the third chance, and it is the build-up to the goal that was scored from a set piece where Vorm did make a mistake in terms of trying to punch the ball away from Van Dijk, and he didn't do it well. But when you look at how the build-up is, it kind of stems what Liverpool were trying to do. And Alderweireld is guilty of this earlier on in the game when he tried to play forward. He tried to play a diagonal into Dyer. Dyer ducked and Salah broke free, and that led to a chance that eventually awarded Liverpool a free kick on the edge of the box. But here we have him pushing forward. Again, all midfielders are dropping off deeper, trying to get on the ball. But again, like I said, the box that they have right in that central space, there's no space for any of the Spurs players to really get on it with time to really play their way out of trouble. So Alderweireld now is looking to play the diagonal because he has nowhere to go. He plays the diagonal. It ends up hitting off Firmino, who blocks it. And it falls into the path of Mane, who's able to drive forward. However, Spurs recover well, but he's not able to get his shot off. He doesn't get a shot off. They clear the lines, but it's Eriksen with a poor back pass back into that space for Mane, who eventually earns the corner kick. Spurs, in a nutshell, just weren't getting the job done. You think about other opportunities. One play towards the end of the half where it's simply Dembele losing the ball and Milner dispossesses him and he plays it out to Salah out in the left channel. You have Rose already high, so Salah's there. Vertonghen steps with him. You have Rose and Winks coming to the ball. They're trying to obviously trap Salah, but they take a very long time to do it. They take their time to get there. Salah got the pass from Wijnaldum. Wijnaldum continued his run forward. What happens there is Wijnaldum's played in free. You have Alderweireld and Trippier come across with Firmino, 2v2. He takes too long to really play the pass to Firmino, and he fires a shot wide of the net. But when you think of it as a whole, Spurs really weren't doing much with the ball apart from Eriksen darting into that space. They weren't creating any chances. They didn't force Alisson Becker to any saves, and their sloppiness in possession allowed Liverpool to consistently hit them on the counterattack. Those are only 3 key opportunities. There were a few more other plays in transition where Liverpool could have broke forward in the first half alone, and Liverpool finally pounced from a set piece, but it's just a big warning sign for the Spurs side, who struggled to create, and with the ball they weren't reliable either, and they went into the first half, or they went into halftime trailing 1-0. Then we get to the second half, and nothing really changed in terms of what Spurs were trying to do, but Liverpool did drop off into more of a 4-5-1 throughout. Instead of playing that 4-3-3, looking to soak up pressure, looking to hit on the counterattack. You think about what Spurs were trying to do. Again, Alderweireld in the opening minutes trying to play a crossfield pass that was intercepted. Again, there still wasn't enough space for Spurs to really attack them in midfield. You think about Spurs' best chances prior to conceding the second goal. It stemmed from Lucas Moura. One was a poor mistake from Gomez. Moura pounced. But what happens is that as he was breaking free, Van Dijk came across, which that partnership has done very well in covering for each other. In Van Dijk making mistakes and Gomez making mistakes, they often have each other's back and cover the space well. And that happened there. The other chance stemmed from Eriksen dropping off a bit deeper and clipping a ball into Lucas Moura, who was able to run past Arnold, and he was able to cut in past Gomez, but he fired a shot to the near post, dragged it off the post and wide. But besides that, Liverpool still were able to pounce on the same opportunities because Spurs were making the same mistakes. Look at it in the opening stages. It's Dembele getting a pass in midfield, losing the ball, taking his time dallying on it. Then you have Salah running at Vertonghen. He runs at Vertonghen. You have Mane breaking in with Dyer trying to recover. What happens there is he cuts in on Vertonghen, plays the cross to Mane, who then turns, forces Vorm into another save. Again, a big issue with Spurs not taking good care of the ball. It's so simplistic and they weren't getting the job done, and that is why they were struggling. You look at the goal, it's just simple play. Spurs basically, when they're out in that 4-4-2 diamond, the shuttlers have to push out. So what happens here is that Eriksen pushes out to Robertson. The goal comes out of nothing. All it is just Mane simply peeling off Trippier. Trippier not noticing it. Ball clipped over to him. He's able to break free on goal. His cross into the box ends up being cut off by Vertonghen, who comes across. Vertonghen cuts it off. It hits off the post. Firmino had already made the run and he taps his effort into the net. 2-0 Liverpool. Spurs really struggling, but there is one play that really summed up what Firmino did very well, and it's, like I said, in the first half, he did play both roles very well. Ball in, what he does simply here is he pulls Alderweireld out of position. He links play with Mane, who's able to drive across Trippier. So he drives across Trippier to get the ball. You have Keita running in behind him. You have Salah running with Vertonghen. And a lot of this happened in the second half. Just counterattacks galore. You have yourself a 3v2. Mane is running. He holds off the run, plays it to Keita. Keita's in on goal, should score, forces a save. But besides that, Liverpool constantly had chances on the counterattack. Spurs turned to Lamela. They turned to Son. They took off Winks, and they took off Dembele. Eventually, they took off Dyer, brought on Wanyama, moved to a 4-2-3-1, but still no chances as Liverpool, again, just able to sit off deeper, clog the space in midfield, remain compact, do their defensive work out in wider areas, and pose a threat on the counterattack. Yes, Lamela scored late, but the game was already done pretty much once Firmino got that second goal because Spurs had no answer for them and rarely tested Alisson Becker. So when we look at this game as a whole, Spurs made a lot of mistakes that allowed Liverpool to hit on the counterattack. Liverpool's shape without the ball stopped Spurs from playing through midfield. Eriksen, again, with his runs into the right channel, did offer a threat, but as a grand scheme of things, Liverpool were more compact. They had an attacking threat on the counterattack, which they showed throughout the game, whereas Spurs, again, big issue. If Ericsson's not making those darting runs in, if the midfield is compact with that diamond, they don't really have any penetration, no real service to Lucas Moura and Harry Kane, and they really miss Dele Alli here, and perhaps it's time for a tactical tweak to their system. But let me know what you guys think. Is Liverpool actually the real deal here? Can they challenge for the title? Is this it? What about Spurs? Are they in crisis? Do they need to change their system? Does Son and Lamela need to come into the starting lineup? Meet me in the comments below. Don't forget I upload videos every day, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And that was your daily dose of the interviews.